Hey everyone, welcome back to Nico Likes to Talk, a conversation podcast where my goal is to chat with every single one of my social media followers in a one-on-one conversation. Now, that can mean friends, foes, frenemies, or strangers. I would like to chat with you, get to know you, and figure out why we follow each other and if we should continue by the end of it. Today is part two of my previous video of a solo podcast where I rank the MCU projects up to date, mainly the ones I've watched. Yesterday, I recorded part one and I stopped at Infinity War. I'm currently prepping for Hurricane Milton, so I needed some time to do that. And I figured, well, I need to get part two out before this hurricane arrives. And if I'm swept away, I think everyone deserves to hear my MCU thoughts. If it is truly the last thing you, last opinion you ever hear from me. So here we go. So I left off at Infinity War. I figured that was a great endpoint from yesterday. Here's just a recap, essentially, of my tier list so far. Honestly, haven't slept on all these. I stand by all of them, really. So S tier, God tier. A tier for me means I'll watch it from beginning to end. S tier means say less. It's always on every day, all day, no matter what. B tier means to me that if it's on at a certain section, I'll watch it from that point on to the end for the most part. C tier to me means I'll watch the next 30 minutes of it wherever it's at if I have the time in its runtime. Avengers say, okay, Ultron has just attacked Shanghai or whatever the hell. I'll watch the next 30 minutes of the movie. D tier is I've seen it once, never need to see it again. E tier, I've seen it, didn't really like it, hope to never come across it. And F tier means is thoroughly unwatchable. I wish I had a time machine. So far, nothing has gotten to that point. And I don't think, maybe some of these will. I don't know. But again, I'm just going off the top of my head. No planned speeches on each one of these movies. I'm going off pure memory, pure feeling based off when I first saw the movie to subsequent rewatches, its impact on the MCU as a whole. I'm paying attention to all of that. So let's continue. So we left off with Infinity War. Next on the release order is Captain Marvel. I saw this movie once in theaters. Honestly, it fluctuates between C and D because there's parts of the movie I really enjoy, but for the most part, and it breaks my heart because Carol Danvers is an interesting character. I just don't agree with how they did it in the movie story-wise. And just a recap for those who, for some reason, of course, didn't watch part one, which, all right, fine, whatever, I don't care. I'm not ranking acting in these movies because every one of these actors in these movies is a top tier actor. If people complain about the acting of some of these actors in these movies and they've never watched anything else they've been in, I don't really listen to them because, they're in a comic book movie, for God's sakes. Like, yeah, we can take it seriously, but also, like, it's pretty much like, what did Martin Scorsese say? It's an amusement park. They're roller coasters. It's fine. So I think Carol Danvers in the comics and other media that I've seen that character in is interesting. And she could be a very interesting character, but I just feel like for an MCU, they were trying to do something and it didn't work entirely for me. The stuff with the scrolls is interesting. The stuff with the Flurk and the cat. I'm a cat father, so I'm kind of a sucker for that now. But when it came out, I wasn't a cat father, so I felt nothing for it. But yeah, I've seen it once. I don't think I need to see it again. Just like I feel about Ant-Man and Doctor Strange, when that character pops up in other people's films in small doses, I think it works. But I just think they need to really figure out how to write more standalone characters, not just male or woman characters, but just good characters that want to do good. I mean, they're superheroes for goodness sake. So it was honestly just a movie to watch because after Infinity War post credit scene, they teased Captain Marvel, so you kind of feel like you had to watch it to see how that character helps. Well, let's just get to the main event. Endgame. S tier. For the culmination of an entire MCU run of that 10 years, it's perfect. When I first saw it, I was like, it would be an A tier movie based off Infinity War. Compared to Infinity War, I mean, these two would fluctuate, but as a companion film, I think it's just pretty perfect in the MCU vein of storytelling. Every character gets a send off where if we never saw them again, if we or say that was the last movie, and then we haven't seen a single piece of MCU media, like no shows, no anything, no sequels. If it ended right there, and then 5 years later we did a movie about them, you know, doing something, it would have been perfect. But that was a biblical experience in the theater. Seeing it 3 times, the crowd, like a rock and roll concert. I mean, it was nuts. You just can't get that back. And this is right before COVID too, if I remember correctly. So this was the last God tier movie theater experience where the whole world just smiled and cried. I mean, just like I said about Infinity War, any YouTube video that you've watched praising this movie, those are my feelings. I mean, there's not much I can say that hasn't been said by somebody else online that is more articulate, can explain their feelings in a 3 hour video with depth and I mean, again, speechless thinking about this movie just because we haven't gotten to that point again. And you can tell Marvel has been trying to chase that high ever since, and they just can't get it. And I don't know if it's because of lack of patience, because they spent 10 years building up to this with all these films. And then they stick the landing, and then they try to replicate it with these other side characters. And just like my point with the first Iron Man in the first video, where I said Iron Man 1 is a cake that they baked that was perfect and they did it accidentally. And then Iron Man 2, they tried to do that cake again on purpose and it just doesn't work. I feel like everything since Endgame is kind of like that. But yeah, it's S tier. I don't want to spend all day gushing about it because the feelings that you probably have about the movie, I have. Like, nothing else needs to be said. It's just, thank God I lived long enough to see this because I don't think we'll get that again. And that's okay. Like, not everything needs to be replicated, but I'm so grateful to be alive to watch that from 2008 to 2019, from high school to boot camp to work to marriage to all the things that encapsulated this. I'm just I'm just grateful, and that's all you can be. Now, on to, some would say, the downturn. Boy, okay. Spider-Man: Far From Home, D tier, and again, I watched it once, don't need to watch it again. Interesting scenes in the movie. I thought Mysterio was pretty interesting, but character plot stuff, I mean, the movie starts with Peter wanting to confess to Zendaya's MJ how much he likes her or loves her, but it's so jarring because we never established they had any relationship in the first movie. And I get it because she's MJ. Comic books, it has to, try to match up. But you look at the other movies, the Tobey Maguire movies, Andrew Garfield movies, like they establish some sort of chemistry. Now, because we know the actors are dating in real life, it sort of lends itself to it, sure. But character wise, it just sort of skips over the fact of them like crushing on each other. Like there's was never a point where there was any magnetism in that movie, especially in the previous movie and into that one. So I thought it was interesting Spider Man was in Europe, but again, it's the whole Tony Stark tech of it all. Like, okay, Spider Man's trying to live up to Tony Stark's legacy, and then civilians are asking him, like, hey, are you gonna live up to Tony's legacy? I kind of feel like that's kind of weird. Like, if we go with the MCU, if you lived in MCU in that time, Iron Man and the rest of the Avengers are out there. At no point did the civilians think that Iron Man and Spider Man were like Batman and Robin, you know? Like, it just doesn't fit. Like, the fact that he's trying to live up to his legacy, that is more so for the audience. Because in Civil War, we saw Tony recruit Peter, but the rest of the world, they don't, they're like, okay, there's a Spider Man now, there's an Ant Man. Like, why not choose Ant Man? Like, everyone is on the Avengers at this point. Like in the Battle of Earth, everybody helped out. The Guardians, the all the magic users on Earth, all everyone helped out. Like, why would they assume Peter is his ward? It's not like the information was disseminated across the planet. As far as the world's concerned, Captain America's probably dead. Actually, no. We learn in a later installment that they think Captain America's on the moon. But yeah, I just thought it was an interesting movie. The Nick Fury of it all, I feel like they kind of stripped the gravitas away from Nick Fury as the movies go on. I mean, Winter Soldier was Nick Fury at his most badass, and then every subsequent movie they just sort of turn him into more of a joke. And I think that's one of the issues of the MCU. Like, not everything is funny or as a joke. Not every character has to quip, because if everybody's quipping, nobody's taking things seriously. And I think in phase 4, they really just was like, well, people are going to go because he's on the poster and we love Sam Jackson. We all love him. And then in the end, it turns out the Nick Fury he was dealing with was actually a Skrull. And it's like, okay, it's just a lot. But yeah, it's just as a sequel, I don't think it improves on the first movie at all. And the issue with a lot of these Marvel sequel movies is we see these characters in other movies pop up who have some sort of character development, and then we see them again. Um, yeah, so that. And then Ant-Man and the Wasp, another D tier movie. Again, you see it once, you're like, okay, character of Ghost has the quantum sickness. Honestly, it's just kind of forgettable. Like Scott Lang and Janet are an interesting duo, but it's just you don't think about it again. And that's the crappy part about some of these movies. It's like if you don't think about it again, like what what's the point? Like it leaves me feeling nothing. And you're like, okay, it has some funny scenes, but I just don't care. And that I think I did skip one. Yeah, I just don't care. You know what? That's why it was weird here. Ant-Man and the Wasp came out after Infinity War. So still, that's even worse. Like I forgot all about it. Like I really went from Captain Marvel to Ant-Man and the Wasp. Like I don't care. And that's the sad part. Interesting characters that just don't have a lot to do in their own movie. And I'm not saying every movie needs to have world-ending stakes, but just nothing's happening. And that's sad for me. And again, all the actors are good. It's just what are we going to do with that? WandaVision TV show, C tier. The exploration of grief and the whole sitcom sort of works. I would watch one or two episodes again, maybe if I was truly, I would say, bored. But it sticks with you. Um, the idea that Wanda creating the hex and sort of processing her grief with Vision. Now, the only ding I have against it is they were sort of building up the relationship over the movies, but in every movie they were trying to build the relationship from Age of Ultron to Civil War and then into Infinity War. They're not the most interesting part of the movie, you know. And it's kind of sucks because then when the show comes on, they're interesting, but you're kind of like, I can't wait for it to, to come undone. Then I remember all the theories going around about Mephisto and maybe Reed Richards was in it, and then that wasn't it. It was just the hex. The Agatha part, funny. Now, showing my cards, I haven't seen the Agatha All Along show that's currently airing. I don't know if I will because I'm not a big magic, you know, fan. I mean, yeah, Harry Potter, sure, maybe, but I never was into like wizards and magic and witches and all that stuff. So that's that's just my personal belief. I just don't find all that really interesting, the whole spells and all that stuff. So I'm gonna say C tier. Some episodes I'd watch again or go on YouTube and be like, oh man, that was a cool scene. I really enjoyed her, storming the facility to find Vision. I enjoyed the Agatha All Along reveal. The whole fake Pietro was kind of funny. The sitcom style, every episode was interesting. Yeah, WandaVision. Falcon and Winter Soldier. This one is interesting because I'm going to say B. And I'm going to say B because Falcon and Bucky are one of my favorite MCU characters out of the, that could probably be a whole nother video of me ranking the characters, but I really enjoyed their banter in all the movies together. I really enjoyed the character growth. I love the racial commentary of the show. I mentioned last video how Anthony Mackie's Falcon made a Mark Furman joke. And I think I misspoke when I said that the Mark Furman Rodney King. I meant to say OJ about during the OJ trial. But Rodney, I mean, I don't go into all that now, but yeah, Rodney King does have some interesting role to play in the whole OJ Mark Furman trial. There's some interesting articles that talk about, if Rodney King wasn't beaten, OJ wouldn't have won the trial at the time. And interesting point in American history. I'll just say that. But I like how like Falcon doesn't shy away from the the conversations about race in the MCU. Now, some of it's heavy handed for sure, but I like how they handled some of it. I enjoyed how they touched on what happened after the snap. Now, I am very disappointed with the MCU when it comes to life after the snap because that incident is so catastrophic that it would change the course of history forever. Not just on Earth, but the universe, right? Thanos snapped away half of all living creatures in the universe for 5 years. And this show tackles, okay, what happens to nations' borders when that happens? What happens to people being radicalized, the religious zealots possibly? Like what happens to Earth during that time? And I think an interesting show that Marvel really should have done is set a show during the 5 years between Infinity War and Endgame on a human ground level and what's happening. Like now we have like the Punisher and Daredevil and all them in the MCU, but I've always thought it'd have been interesting if we set another season of the Punisher, another season of Daredevil during the 5 years of the snap to see, I mean, how crime has increased in New York or all across the world. Like what has happened during that time? Because I think back to when I was a kid, when 9/11 and how that, of course, changed the course of American history or world history. And I just remember watching on the news the towers falling. I remember watching my parents and everybody I know react to like the war in Iraq and George W. Bush and just all these things I'm processing growing up and how I had a feeling things were different. Like air going in to the airport has been different. Public transportation, social, the economy, everything just changed. And this show sort of dipped its toe into it a bit, but didn't go as far enough. Maybe they didn't have enough episodes. Maybe they didn't want to get too political. But you have a show about Falcon and the Winter Soldier about Captain America's legacy. That's the time to get political. I mean, all the Captain America movies are political, and let's go for it. Like, I appreciated how John Walker was kind of crazy and a little whacked out. Like, I appreciated that. The Carly super soldier aspect of it all, I think, was a little undercooked. I mean, I get it. Their point is to be one world, but for a villain, it definitely needed to be more, you know, like I needed to feel their plight. And I don't think we got enough of that. Zemo was interesting in the show. Of course, they turned villains into some sort of comedians after a while. And the Isaiah Bradley thing was perfect. I mean, just the idea of them borrowing from that lore of the comics, of a black super soldier after Captain America that did the same thing Steve Rogers did in First Avenger, but Isaiah Bradley was tortured for it. And then I'd be lying if at the end, when Falcon becomes Captain America officially, his speech is a little long winded, of course, and the costume's sort of janky, but him showing Isaiah Bradley the Museum of Captain America and how he has now been added to the museum because historically, Black Americans' history can be erased by history, all the contributions to society. And I think that was even to stand into every quote unquote minority in America who feels that their history is being erased. And I believe that show tried to tackle something. And I remember a lot of people didn't really like it too much because, look, Steve Rogers is amazing. He's good, yes. But in the comics, yeah, he could have passed the mantle to Bucky. He could have passed the mantle to Sam. Both have took up the mantle, but I think in MCU, Sam was the more logical choice. Bucky was still getting over his decades-long trauma as a brainwashed assassin, and that assassin can't just automatically pick up the shield of Captain America. And I really appreciated what the show was trying to do. If it got a second season, we'll see what they do there. But Anthony Mackie as Captain America is now getting his own movie, which is pretty cool in my opinion. But yeah, I really appreciate this show. And it's B tier because it's not perfect. These Marvel shows either need to be 10 episodes long, but this 6-episode, 7-episode stuff is not it, especially if you're not firing on all cylinders. Like, I often think we got shows like The Wire, Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, Sopranos, The Leftovers. I mean, Abbott Elementary. You think of all these shows ran by successful showrunners who are given the freedom to do what they need to do. Why can't Marvel give those same showrunners that freedom to really cook and really iron out a story? And it really kind of breaks my heart that a lot of the shows are kind of lackluster. But B tier, just so I can get off that. Black Widow, I saw it not in theaters because it was on Disney Plus. D, it wasn't bad, but this is a movie they should have put in directly after Infinity War or before it, right? Or after Infinity War to get more of her backstory before she bites the dust in Endgame. And I feel for Scarlett Johansson because she was part of the Avengers team since she's been in since Iron Man 2. Where's Iron Man 2? Right in here. She's been a part of the team, and the fact it took them this long to get a movie. And I've read the book, How MCU Took Over Hollywood, that came out, I think, earlier this year, and about the backstory on how sexist a lot of the toy companies are and were in regards to why they didn't even believe women action figures sold and women don't sell toys. I mean, that type of bullshit, which is crazy that they still believe that and did believe that it took her this long to get her own movie. And I agree with her. She should have sued. I'm glad she sued the hell out of Marvel and Disney for no, you told me that my movie was going to be in the movie theaters. You put that crap on Disney Plus, not shame with the bullshit. And I appreciate it. But movie wise, D tier, saw it once, never see it again. And a lot of these D tier movies, these characters have never really popped back up. But moving on. Shang-Chi, Same thing, D tier. Saw it once. Interesting villain, okay main character, but the issue that we run into, especially with a lot of these movies, and especially this one, is we haven't seen the character since. I mean, the martial arts was okay, but it wasn't like the Raid level or Ip Man level or old school like Hong Kong action level. It kind of got ridiculous in the end with the whole magic dragon, and I get it, it's trying to go into that mysticism world, but it's interesting they chose Shang-Chi as a Marvel hero, but they have yet to do anything else with his character. Because in phase one, Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, like C level characters like Shang-Chi is, let's be real here, they made sure you saw them every couple years. Like here, they're popped up in here, hey, they're doing this. Like, what the hell's happening? Just like after the Endgame, who the hell are on the Avengers? So like they do these one-off movies hoping we're going to remember them, but what the hell has Shang-Chi been doing in the last several years? Like, what's happening? And I think that's the issue with the Marvel phases from after 3 till now. After the first Avengers, we had a feeling when we saw Thanos, like, hey, we're building up to something. And then, of course, they course corrected over the years to eventually get us to Endgame, but that was in a pre-Endgame world. The audiences want some sort of plan so they know what to look forward to. So we know what I'm spending money on. And that's one of the reasons I'm not watching some of these shows, because I'm like, I don't know what the hell we're leading to. Like, I thought I knew, and we'll get to that, but not anymore. Oh, D tier. I'll never watch it again. Even I have no clips on YouTube, no nothing. Again, D tier, because what the hell are we doing? And look, I'm a guy who loves ideas of like gods and storylines, and I watched every Highlander movie. I watched the Highlander show. I'm a sucker for content where characters live forever and have to deal with that. And here's a movie where these characters live forever and have superpowers, and it's boring. Like, what are we doing? And that's not good. Again, the acting, everyone is acting their asses off. And there's some interesting scenes in there, but like nothing that I remember or care for. And that, again, breaks my heart because they have nuggets that they're just not letting cook. And the issue with all this is this too much too soon. Like within a year, we had WandaVision, Shang-Chi, Eternals, Black Widow. Like it was Falcon Winter Soldier. Like they just cranking them out. There's not enough time to let something marinate. And I don't know. I'm just wasn't a fan. And I just remember watching a movie like I'm kind of bored. Like it looks good, yes, but nothing's happening that I'm interested in. And I think when you have a giant roster of characters, it kind of dilutes the pool, the message. Like they had like 9, 10 Eternals. The Avengers started off with just 6 members. Like the Power Rangers start off with just 5, then they get a 6. Like the more characters you have that are the good guy, everybody only gets 5 minutes to tell who they are, what they like, what they don't, their powers, and then that's it. I think they could have like made the Eternals like 5 deep, 6 deep, called it a day, moved on. But 10 characters and half of them you don't even see through most of the movie. They just stand around and look at each other. Like, what? Um, Another swing and a bit of a miss. I can see why they haven't greenlit a sequel. It's just, and I get it, they're trying things, but no. Hawkeye. I liked Hawkeye. I didn't love Hawkeye. And sadly, it's D tier because um, it's kind of forgettable. Like, I appreciated Hawkeye in every one of his movies and his appearances, and he gets his own show. I don't know if it's like a 2 years too late. You know what I mean? If they had released Hawkeye, Black Widow after Infinity War, right? In that year, just to give people time to get to know these characters before the end, it's almost like doing a prequel series before the final season of a show. I think it would have landed better because then we would have got to know him more. But again, the show is about him grieving after Natasha and getting back to his family. Again, kind of whatever. You watch it once and you're like, all right, I've seen it. It's not bad, but it's just not memorable either. Okay. This one may be a bit controversial, but I'm going to go C tier with, man, No Way Home. Now, I'm a huge Spider Man fan. And I would definitely watch the scenes where him and the other two Spider Men are going to get together. Multiverse wise, there's been better multiverse movies, content, TV shows, comics. Once you see the movie once, all of the, shock wears off, just like a lot of movies. But you put on Scarface and I'm like in it from beginning to end because it's a fucking vibe. This movie's just kind of okay. He is upset that Mysterio revealed, I mean, not upset, like Mysterio reveals his identity after Far From Home. And so Spider Man has to deal with that. And then his logic is to go to Doctor Strange. And instead of wishing to have everybody forget that Mysterio said, revealed his identity, like he could have literally asked Doctor Strange to cast a spell to make everybody forget that day. Because if you have a spell that makes everybody forget who you are, or everybody across the multiverse knows who Spider-Man is, like the spell gets messed up, just a bunch of gobbledygook, timey-wimey shit. Why didn't he just wish for that? Please forget that everyone knows that that day happened. I mean, because clearly in the movie, Doctor Strange establishes that that Wong is under a spell of forgetfulness. Like he could make the whole world just forget that that Mysterio said his identity. Because in the end of the movie, he makes everyone forget that Peter Parker exists. Like Peter Parker exists off every database in the world. So people only know Spider-Man. It kind of falls apart when it's like this kid is a genius who makes his own web fluid, is one of the smartest characters in the Marvel universe, and is kind of like so impetuous. Is impetuous the right word? I think so, maybe. But just so like, I need my life to be fixed at all costs. And it seems like they were trying to pull from the One More Day storyline from the comics, but it just, to me, it falls flat. After the first viewing, the second viewing, you're kind of, things just start unraveling. It doesn't make any sense. And then once Toby and Andrew get to the movie, it picks up steam. Green Goblin coming back is amazing. Like all the villains coming back is interesting, but like that would have been an interesting fourth movie, not a third movie. I'm impressed that the corporations were able to work together. I love good corporate synergy to get every actor that played the live action Spider-Man in the last 20 years together for, to not just cameo, actually have a substantial role in the movie. There are some emotional moments that I appreciate. The ending kind of gets me, he goes back to basics, no longer has a Stark tech, thank God. And now, after 3 movies, he's the Spider-Man we know. And it's like, sure, maybe, but like, I'm sure the actor Tom Holland was going to do this forever. I mean, he could, but like, you kind of want to move on. And that's my thing. They never let Spider-Man grow up. They always want him to be a teenager. And it's like some of his best stories, he's married and in college or, doing stuff, teaching. So yeah, once you know the gimmick of the movie, it kind of falls thin. Like the emotional beats of the movie don't flow all the way through. Like Toby's Spider-Man 2, to me, it's just, you feel that his life sucks. And that's how Spider-Man, in my opinion, especially at different points of his career, things just suck. Because either he doesn't have money, or if he has some money, other things in his life isn't going right. And I think the Spider-Verse movie sort of really nailed that like being Spider-Man is a sacrifice. And I just kind of feel like the movie doesn't hold up as much. That's why it's C tier. There's scenes I'd watch again, but watching it from beginning to end, I don't think I'll ever do again. Honestly, the last 30 minutes is makes it all worth it. The first hour and a half, you're kind of like, whatever, in my opinion. So Moon Knight. Now, I fluctuate between D and E tier, and I'm tempted to put it at E because it was billed as a very like violent, like, oh, this show's about to kick some at, like, if you don't know who Moon Knight is, he's about to change the game. Again, everyone's acting is great. It's just the ending, the middle, like it's just nothing in that show was super memorable. And I watched it weekly, and to me, that's bad. Like if I don't want to go back and rewatch your show, that's bad. There's no episode that sticks out to me that is interesting. Like he takes forever to really get into the Moon Knight vibe, and even then, it's like Ethan Hawke's the villain, more spiritual mysticism, ancient Egypt sort of. I think this when the show suffers from not being long enough. Interesting premise, like it's an interesting premise that just wasn't executed as well as I believe it could have been, and that is my only gripe. Well, one of the not my only gripe, but it holds a lot when it comes to these TV shows. And mind you, at this point, I've watched several of these TV shows so far, and each one I'm finding diminishing returns. And that's why it's E tier. Or to be fair, it's not as bad as Thor the Dark World, but I guess I get to go with my logic. Yeah, it has to be D tier. Watch it once, I'm done, never think about it again. If he pops up in other stuff, fine. All right, next up, Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, another D tier. And I thought this would be C tier, but after talking, like again, watched it once, never want to watch it again. There, there are scenes that I'd watch again, but no, like even the whole cameo of the Illuminati thing, it's interesting. Like I feel like they didn't let Sam Raimi go as far as he could have been. And I think that's the issue. You have Sam Raimi. If it wasn't for him, you wouldn't have the MCU because he showed like, oh, you're going to make some money in the 21st century with superhero stuff if you do it right. And they just don't think they let him cook as much as he could have. Like this is Sam Raimi we're talking about, and it has some interesting visuals, but you can tell they're operating in a certain constraint. If they let him go full on Doctor Strange, like wacky, freaking like Dick Kirby, Steve Ditko, like we in this third, fifth, sixth dimension, like we're dealing with multiverse stuff again in a year where we had everything everywhere all at once, and we had Spider-Verse and various other multiverse media. Like we know what it's like when it's done at a top tier level, and you got Marvel with all this money and they just have a few variants and whatever. Like Wanda as the villain I enjoyed. She was terrifying to an extent, but that's it. And it's kind of sad. Like I really wanted it to be higher. Like these, like there's scenes I'd watch again just because of what I like. Like A Credible Hulk is infinitely more watchable than these. And that's saying something. Miss Marvel. Another, oh God, DC seems like a lot. D, I mean, it was kind of forgettable for me too. And Kamala Khan is a interesting character. Her family's funny. It had some interesting stuff. It's just I kind of don't like they didn't go with the embiggening powers. Then I mean, I get it. She's supposed to be a mutant now, but I don't like the crystal thing. I think they were trying to they wrote that in there like that because they didn't want people confused as to her and Reed Richards. I get it. They were trying to write it to like second or third graders because they think, oh, if when we finally do Fantastic Four and Reed Richards can stretch, if she can embiggen, does like why we have that character with that power set? Like they want two different power sets, right? But I mean, War Machine and Iron Man have similar power sets. I mean, they have the same suit. Just War Machine is not as smart as Tony, but it's still a suit of armor that flies. So for me, it was just like there's times to deviate from the source material, and there's times to do your own thing. But I feel like seeing Kamala Khan just embiggen on the screen, big fists, like, lean into it. And then, of course, you got the Marvel Avengers game where she's one of the main characters and she has her stretching and bigging powers and it works. Like, let's go full into it. The whole crystal thing just comes off a little weird to me. And that is one of the dings of it. But also, like, the characters are likable. It's just kind of a forgettable story. It's literally, okay, here's her origin story. Here you go. Again, 6 episodes. I feel like there's not enough time to really dig into who somebody is, what they're about. I don't know. It's just, I wish it did something. Thor, okay. Thor, Love and Thunder. Gosh dang. Again, another D tier. Why? Because they wasted Christian Bale. Thor's funny. I'm glad Jane's back. It works to some extent, but they wasted Christian Bale. Like a guy's called Gore the God Butcher, and you never see him do it. You see stuff off screen. Like he could have been Bane of that. What are we doing? And even the actor Chris Hemsworth admitted that they felt like they maybe went a little too far in Love and Thunder. Like they figured out he's funny in Ragnarok. But I think the perfect balance of comedic and serious Thor is in Infinity War. Like that is perfect. He's funny, but he's also very serious because he's on a mission. This is just like, we're drunk again, off wine. Let's just have a good time. And he's the first one to get 4 movies. So of the main 3 Avengers. So it's a tough watch. Funny at times, interesting action, but it's pretty much a comedy. And, I just don't think it worked. She-Hulk. And I was surprised myself with this. As I was watching it, I think it's C tier. Funnily enough, I thought the self-aware nature of it is funny. I think she's an interesting character. I believe that when I even watching the show, I was entertained every episode. And I can honestly say that I wasn't bored an episode or two, like watching Moon Knight or Miss Marvel. Like She-Hulk, I was like, okay, if it's case of the week and it delves into funny things, fine. Like the whole Daredevil popping up, spoiler alert, I thought was interesting, but it didn't break lore or anything. The ending episode was pretty self-aware, bringing back the Abomination, which was also a nice surprise. I didn't really watch any promos for the show, but yeah, Jessica Walters, I think, is pretty funny. Like it was an interesting show. Like I thought, the discourse online is like, oh, could she master the Hulk's powers where Bruce took forever? And I'm like, it's the same reason that every other character and all these other properties can master their abilities within a moment. Like we are never, at this point, you're never going to get a movie like Iron Man where you watch him build his suit from the cave to his first flight test to him learning about the icing situation to him struggling to take it off for the first time. You are never going to get that in-depth of an origin story again. It's just never going to happen. They're going to speed run this crap. So in the first episode, they're like, okay, she got Bruce's blood. She can control her powers because she's always angry because, she talks about what it's like being a woman in the workplace, being a woman in general, always on edge based off the world living. Like, okay, fine, I get it. I'm okay with that. I did not find any issue with that. I was like, okay, it makes sense. Fine. Especially, she also had Bruce there teaching her, who went through his own trials and tribulations to learn to control his anger and to merge his 2 consciousnesses into one. So fine. Like, certain things you just got to turn your brain off and say, don't worry about it. Now, not all things you turn your brain off, but certain things you do. You know in your heart that that is a dumb thing to gripe about. Like, it's okay. Even in the comics, she was like in control of her faculties. You don't have to think about it too much. But what makes it C tier is like I would watch some episodes again, some clips that I found funny. Um, and that's it. Werewolf by Night, I did not watch, so I will not rank it. Where would it be? I mean, I don't know. Probably D, like the rest of the stuff. You know what? Before I get to Wakanda Forever, let me do Quantum Mania. No, what else is next? I think they're just doing whatever. So you know what? I'll do Quantum Mania. E tier. The movie didn't look great. The storyline was so. And honestly, this does lead into my point when it comes to Wakanda Forever. Recasting. Recasting Jonathan Majors for a new king, I think, is something they should do in a way. I think it's interesting that they sort of build up a character, and because of an actor's personal life, whatever's happening, you know, I believe that they shouldn't just abandon a character. Now, that aside, I think if you're doing some bullshit in your personal life, and yeah, you should get fired from it. And like, all right, sorry, you know, oops, you got you. Business wise, we can't have that. We can't have this person on the face of the marketing right now. If this happened like 20 years ago, it'd be a different story. But we're in today. I get that. Character wise, Kane could have been interesting, but in a movie where he fights Ant-Man and Ant-Man kicks his ass, just cannot stand. Especially after, and we'll get to Loki, when this character is being built up as the big bad of this next phase. And mind you, it's taken freaking forever, a year and some change to even get to this. That's too long of a wait. So I can see why they dropped him. But again, recasting, just do it. I talked about this about Black Panther, how I think they should have recasted T'Challa just to continue that character story, because other superheroes have had the luxury and privilege to be recasted. We wouldn't have gotten this Tom Holland Spider-Man or No Way Home if other Spider-Man haven't been cast in the role. Granted, different universes, but the audience is not dumb. We understand that there's different people playing the character. Need explanation of, oh, why are there three different Spider-Man and four different Batman? Like, don't worry, their comic book friend will explain it all to them. Just go watch the movie. Even in this movie, they recasted Scott Lang's daughter, Cassie Lang. So, like, Marvel's not above recasting people. Like, they'll recast the hell out of somebody. Terrence Howard played the original War Machine. They recast him with Don Cheadle. Second movie, they said, who cares? Get over it and move forward. All right, we done did it. The original Thanos was played by some voice actor stunt guy, if I'm correct, who showed up in Civil War in the beginning fight scene, and they recasted Josh Brolin. Okay, fine. Like, recast if you need to keep the story going. Just like different comic book artists draw characters differently, it's the same thing. We'll figure it out. So, yeah, the movie wasn't that great. It was kind of, it had potential, but it just, nothing came of it. And it's on Thor the Dark World level, just because with all that money, and this is what they turned out, not a fan. Wakanda Forever, B tier. And it's a very emotional movie. I think Shuri as Black Panther's interesting, but it's just a lot going on in that movie. A lot of meta stuff with Chadwick passing, and it's sad, and I get that. But wise, I like the idea that Namor is the villain. I mean, historically, like, he wants all the smoke at all times. I get that. It's just some of the CGI in the movie wasn't up to par. The storyline was so. Shuri being dealing with her anger, having honestly the same character arc that T'Challa went on in Civil War, I just kind of feels a little redundant. And what I would have thought would have been an interesting storyline to go is after the end of the first Black Panther, T'Challa learns to incorporate some of what Killmonger was preaching and righting the wrongs of his ancestors by opening Wakanda to the rest of the world because, they have the technology to improve lives, especially Black lives across the world. Okay, I thought that's interesting. But he's also the king of a nation, and we can get political with it. What I believed and what really could have worked is still have Namor, maybe Shuri as a second Black Panther in the movie, but T'Challa's story could have been okay, recasted him, of course. I think what would have worked if they had a storyline asking what Wakanda was like during the 5-year snap. We know Okoye was still alive during that snap because she was in Endgame, helping with the Avengers. I think it would have been interesting if it took place after Endgame and we got to see what life was like in Wakanda pre-snap and after the snap. And by that, I mean, how does Wakanda feel that T'Challa opened up its borders to the rest of the world? Because here in America, of course, there's a lot of conversation. It's a very hot button topic on border control and opening up to everybody. I mean, this is a nation of built off immigration. So it's only fair that people get to immigrate and do this. Now, in the MCU, what do the people of Wakanda feel? How do they feel? What's going on in their head, knowing that their leader opened up their border to the rest of the world? And not long after he did that, hosted the Avengers there to fight an intergalactic battle on their land. Thanos brought his army to their land. T'Challa said, sure, come in and fight the battle here, hide out here. And then they lose. And then half the Wakandans get snapped away. And then they're left to not only without a protector and rebuild. So the speech that Angela Bassett's character gave in Wakanda Forever at the with the UN or Senate hearing was powerful. It's like they think they've lost their protector. And I think that's interesting. Like what happened during that time? And then even after that time, do they still trust him to lead? Because of you, I lost my family. I thought I did. I believed in Wakanda. My family's been in Wakanda for generations. And then here you come letting, quote unquote, the Avengers, aka the white man, in, and you brought their war to our doorstep. How do they feel about that? There's got to be some people that believe what Killmonger believed in Wakanda now, because Black Panther is set up. The first one is that Killmonger's the one who only believed that, and he could have poisoned everybody in Wakanda about that. And then Wakanda Forever is legit. Okay, you open up the doors to not only other humans but aliens. Like, what the hell? And that's interesting. And that's also, just to bring it back to Thor: Love and Thunder, it just hit me. I also didn't appreciate the joke that they had a joke in the movie called Infinity Cones, where Thor's revenge against Thanos was he killed his Asgardian brothers and sisters, killed his actual brother Loki, and he went on that quest for revenge and went through all that, all the grief, all that, all the weight gain, all that, to him to green light ice cream shot called Infinity Cones in New Asgard. It's ridiculous. That's highly disrespectful for a joke. But again, back to Wakanda Forever. I just think that it could have been more of that. I think it could have been a real interesting movie. Now, the movie we got, to really keep it onto that, I thought it was nice. I like the scene of like Namor sort of destroying Wakanda with, the water flooding. It's not a bad movie. It deals with grief well. It's just, I'm interested in that alternate sequel and that's why it's B tier. Like I'm excited to see where it goes. I the ending scene with Shuri sort of burning, I think the clothing of T'Challa or whatever it was, I can't remember, and her meeting T'Challa's son, trying to set him up as the new Black Panther probably 20 years from now, lock that kid in a picture deal for the rest of his life. I thought was beautiful, but it's just, kind of feels like a redundant story. And that's why. So again, I'm always a big fan of recasting. I don't think any character is so precious that we don't want to watch another person play them, because that's not how art has historically been done, where this person can only play this one. Again, if this was like The Godfather and like, okay, let's remake The Godfather, that's different. I'm not talking about remaking. I'm talking about in this sort of superhero IP specifically, that if a person passes away and there's an opportunity to keep their story going with another actor of not higher caliber, but just equal, if not better, to continue to tell the story, we should. I think it's only fair. And I'm sure Chadwick, he said the same thing. Don't let this character die with me. And they did, because they didn't want to disrespect, I guess, the Black community, as if like, how dare you have somebody else other than Chadwick play it? Yeah, there'll be those who say, man, Chadwick's the best. But look at Spider-Man. There's 3 different live action movie Spider-Man, and people still debate which one's the best to this day, and they'll continue to do that. That's fine. That's called good discourse and good discussion. But when you lock yourself into this person is gone forever and you'll never see this version again, especially in a multiverse story, you tell me every T'Challa looks like Chadwick Boseman? I hope not. I think there's other ones. So there's that. I'm gonna do both at the same time. Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special. I saw it once. It was okay. Whatever. It was funny. Good. Guardians of the Galaxy 3. This one, sorry. This one I think is B tier. Out of both Guardians, I think 2 and 3 are my favorite. I mean, if you're an animal lover, which I assume you are, just like I am, now that I have cats, I adore them. That movie is brutal. I mean, it'll wreck you watching that thing. I mean, people are blabbering in the theaters. That just shows the power of James Gunn's writing. Like Guardians 1, I think the ending is the best thing. When he's touching the stone and sees his mom and, take my hand, it's beautiful. But 2, the father son, I'm a sucker for father son stories, or just father stories in general. Um, you know, and it's funny thinking about that. Today's the day my dad died. I think it had been 10 or 11 years since he died. So I'm always a sucker for stories about fathers and family, especially when it's done well. Like I won't just give you tears because your father's dead. Blah, blah, blah. That's not going to move me. It has to be precise. To get me, you got to try. Like I don't give my tears to movies just because some sad shit's happening. Like I'm more liable to laugh than anything. But Guardians 3 got me. And I think it's a perfect send off to the iteration of the Guardians. And it works. That Adam Warlock thing, he's kind of a joke, but I gave it a pass. I just did. Beautiful. Let's go with Loki. Okay. Loki season 1 and 2. I mean, 2 is not as strong as 1, but there are episodes I'd watch. And I wish other shows and characters got the treatment that Tom Hiddleston's Loki received. Just talk about a character 180. I mean, what it does for the multiverse is interesting, especially the end of season 2. I don't have a lot to say on it. Just like my opinions on it, Endgame and Infinity War, there are pretty sure other YouTubers and people that can really speak more eloquently about it and can really convey their opinions in such a way that makes you change your whole thought process. Whatever they said, I agree. It's just, it's that. There's some things that are kind of hit and miss, but I think it's a fascinating concept, the TVA and Loki sort of change our, especially that first episode. Like for a show that I didn't think would work and it works, take my hat off. Enough said. Okay, now we're getting to the brother. I didn't see Echo. So I'm not gonna talk about that. Like I liked Echo a bit in Hawkeye, but again, I didn't like Hawkeye enough to want to put my time in Echo. From the reviews I've seen, from the people I've that I know personally, and also that I've watched on YouTube, and I trust their opinions. And I've watched good and bad reviews on shows. I don't just stick to one opinion that just because I agree with it. I like to, especially when it comes to superhero content, not everything else, just to put that out there. I hear it was made fast, and it just interesting premise, but it just didn't hit. And that's all right. I'll probably never watch it. Secret Invasion, E. I mean, that it might even be F, but it's I'm a sucker for good political shit, conspiracy shit. And for what they did in that show, and this was the last Marvel show I watched. I think this is where my brain finally just said it literally clicked. Maybe I should say this one for last, but I didn't watch Agatha and I liked What If, but I'll get to What If. This was just like, what the fuck? You got Nick Fury, finally. We're about to get Winter Soldier era Nick Fury coming back from the snap, trying to put shit together, and they just goof it. They just slip and fall, fell through the ice, and just sunk to the bottom. And it's sad. And it could have been Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It could have been like, who do you trust? I mean, the trailer made it seem like it was about to be lit, and they just couldn't do it. And it sucks because it's Nick Fury. I don't think Nick Fury was bad in episode, but other characters around it was just odd. The whole Rhodey scroll, he's the scroll. Spoiler alert if you're gonna watch this shit. He's the secret scroll. I'm sorry. He's the secret scroll. And it doesn't work. It does not work. Um, and it really aggravates me. And then you got Gaia, a scroll who now has the powers of pretty much every Avenger, Captain Marvel. So technically, she's the most powerful person in the universe right now, really. And I have a feeling we'll never see her again. And it's just a shame. It's Marvel feeling like they're drunk off their own supply. Not enough episodes, for one, to care about any of these characters. And it's kind of half baked. And again, the acting is not horrible, but it's just like you have a show called Secret Invasion and you don't feel the conspiracy like a scroll could be anybody. Like the premise of the show, you would think is everyone you thought you knew, you don't. They could have been a scroll this whole time, undermining the world. Not just I want to be a president, but like it, it's when Marvel you can see it seems beautifully acted in certain scenes, but it just can't do it. Uh, I didn't see the Marvels. Um, Same reason because watching Miss Marvel, I didn't care. Everyone else, I didn't care. I read what happened. I saw YouTube videos. I've seen clips, but I can't talk about some I haven't seen. To be fair, I would if these characters pop up in other projects and they're fun, then all right. But that's it. It just it. I'm just at a point where I just don't care enough anymore. The last two that I have seen, What If is a C because there are certain episodes I'd watch again. Certain episodes I really enjoyed. The Killmonger episode I enjoyed. The T'Challa episode I enjoyed. The zombie one. Even in season two, some of the ones I enjoyed. I just want them to get more wacky. And I hear there's only going to be one more season and that's it, which is a shame because in animation, you can tell as much shit as you want. And I feel like they don't. And it almost would be a D, but there's some stuff in there I enjoy. Um, for a premise like What If, there's so much you can do. And my hope is season three, they get even more crazy with it, but it's a little tame right now, and it doesn't have to be. Again, Agatha All Along is airing right now. I have not seen, so I will not talk about it. I don't think I'll ever watch it, and that's fine. But the last one I did see, Deadpool and Wolverine. Okay. Now, looking back at all of these movies, and the biggest complaint I have with the worst ones is the character moments I'm not a fan of, or I just don't feel anything. Watching Deadpool and Wolverine, I felt something. And it's between B and C. B, because for a trilogy for Deadpool, I think it sticks the landing. It's been teasing the Wolverine cameo for years, and they finally got it. And it's barely an MCU movie. It's a C because I wouldn't watch it from beginning to end again. I would just watch certain scenes. And that's why I think I'm going to land it at C because the emotional moments work. So, just like the criteria for here, if I were to watch for the TV show specifically, I would watch different episodes. That's the criteria for B. For movie criteria for B, I would watch it from one point to the end of the movie. And mostly it's like if it's in the middle of the movie, I would say I would watch the rest. And I think even for that logic now, I may bring No Way Home up to B just for the Toby and Andrew aspect of it, because that's around the middle of the movie. So if I had to change it, I'll do that to be a little more fair. But essentially, for movies in B, if it's in the middle of the movie, I'll watch the rest. For episodes, I'll watch certain episodes. C, for movies, I'd watch from 1 point to 30 minutes into it, and then that's it. So from any point, I'll watch 30 minutes in. For shows, maybe I'll watch some clips on YouTube or an episode or two. That's it. Deadpool and Wolverine. If it's at the point where they're in the void after, spoiler alert, Johnny Storm is killed and they're in the car and Wolverine has his argument, I'll watch the rest on. But to me, that's pretty far into the movie. And then the ending of the movie, it was fun, but even when I watched it, I didn't care. Like I went with some friends who've seen it before and they were waiting for my reaction after it. Sure. Now in the movie, I love the cameos. I mean, thank God. I mean, having Blade and come back was amazing, and everyone else. The Gambit joke was funny, but it kind of wore thin after a while. The one thing I didn't like with the Blade one is they gave him a wrong sword. Like, give him his katana. I mean, I don't know. It's not I can't remember the name of the blade, but it wasn't a katana. And I'm not the only one who thought that. Somebody else I talked to, a few other people said the same thing. And I'm not saying he need the trench coat, but if he was sucked out of his world, give him his freaking katana. Like, Elektra got her size, give her him a katana. I just thought it was weird. And it really was bothering me the entire time watching the infight. And little things like that bring things down from a B to a C. It's the attention to detail. Like, even more than Spider-Man, without Blade, none of this would be here. Like, Wesley is the GOAT for now and always. So, but it gets to a C because I just watch certain scenes again, and that's it. My cat's meowing outside. I think he wants to come in. Okay, so this is it. This is it. Now, here's what I'll do for these, just so because I don't want to see these on the bottom here. I'm going to put what I think I would have liked it at. I think this would have been a D. I think Echo would have been a D. I think the Marvels may have been a D. But if they course corrected, let's give it a C because I liked these characters, sure. And Agatha all along, right now, it's sitting because I haven't seen it, and it could be good. I'm gonna say a D. And I think that's it. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, let me go ahead and I'll save this. Yeah. Oh, log in to save. I'll just download the image. I don't need to do that. Or I'll screenshot it. I'm not going to pay for anything on here. Okay. Wow. We did it. We did it. So those are my thoughts. I would love to discuss more of those thoughts in depth So go ahead and like, comment, share, send me a message, subscribe. Tell me how wrong I am. Tell me how right I am. Tell me how I'm just a blabbering mess and I'm not making any sense and I can't form sentences. And I'll still respond.